Shalom uvracha. Be'ezrat Hashem, we shall study Daf Ayin Tet Amud Bet 79b2 in Art Scroll in the Mishnah. Mishnah begins regarding blood that got intermingled, mixed up. Dam, the blood of offerings, dam tmimim, of kosher offerings, of unblemished offerings, that got mixed with bedam balimumin, with the blood of defective animals, in other words, blemished animals, blood of blemished animals. So a mix up again between the blood of unblemished animals, of tmimim, of kosher sacrifices, with the blood of blemished animals. Now, even if the novelty of the Mishnah is that even if the blood of the unblemished animals, the kosher valid sacrifices, that blood, those bloods, if they are the majority, even if they are the majority of the blood that got intermingled with the invalid blood from the invalid offerings, nevertheless, you can't do zerika. The blood application cannot be done upon the altar. Rather, what must be done, says the Mishnah, states the Mishnah, yishafech la'ama, it must be spilled to the ama. You can see an art scroll is the canal. I'm looking at art scroll to tell you which footnote it is. It's footnote 21. Okay. Fine. The Mishnah brings an additional case of additional situation that can arise of a mixture of kosher blood of unblemished animals with blemished animals. Cause a cup. A cup that of blood of blemished animals, bekosot, that got mixed with cups of the blood of kosher animals, of unblemished animals. In other words, it's not that the two bloods of the unblemished animals, invalid animals, and the unblemished, the kosher animals with the invalid animals got mixed up in one cup. No. It's just the cups got mixed up and we don't know which cup has kosher blood from an unblemished animal and which cup has blood from a blemished animal and is thus unkosher. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, says Rabbi Eliezer, Im karav kos echad, if one cup was offered, karav means offered. In other words, if a Kohen that didn't know about this mixture that transpired, he then did the blood application, did zerika of one cup of these cups where this mix-up occurred. So he did the blood application with one cup upon the altar. Ikrevu kol hakosot, that then thereafter, says Rabbi Eliezer, if one cup was offered, in other words, was applied, the blood of one of the cups, and it's unknown whether it's the kosher blood or the unkosher blood, whether it's from the blemished animal, which is unkosher blood for the altar, applying on the altar, or is it the unblemished and it's kosher for applying upon the altar. So if one of the cups the blood was applied, then thereafter, yikrevu kol hakosot, then all the cups can be offered, can be applied, zrika can be thrown upon the blood can be thrown from the other cups upon the altar. Because we say that the cup that was already thrown was the cup of the blood of the maimed animals and invalid blood, and therefore now the other cups are with kosher blood from animals that were kosher sacrifices. That's the view of Rabbi Eliezer. So again, in Karav, Rabbi Eliezer, in Karav Kos Echad, if one cup, the blood of one cup was offered, Yikrevu Kol HaKosot, then all the cups, the other cups can be offered. Because we say that first cup that was offered was invalid blood from the blemished animal, and therefore the other cups is fine. Chachamim Omrim, say the Chachamim, Afilu Karvu Kulan, even if all the cups, in other words, besides one, Afilu Karvu Kulan Chutz Me'echad Mehen, even if all but one of the cups with blood were offered, in other words, were applied upon the altar, but one, where logically you'll say that this cup, that the cup of the blemished animal was already applied upon the altar, was thrown upon the altar, and therefore this last cup for sure is from the unblemished animal. You would think. State the Chachamim the following here. Yishafech Lama. They say a greater novelty. They say that not only do we disagree with you, Rabbi Eliezer, about your case, about the cup, where one cup was offered, we disagree with you, Rabbi Eliezer, say the Chachamim, the sages, that they disagree, and they say, no, we don't say, now we don't assume now that the first cup was from the blemished animal, and therefore we do not say the rest are fine, the blood is fine, and you can do this Rika. Not only that, we say even if you did most of the cups and you only left one cup, and now the probability that this cup, if you talk about, the probability this last cup that remains, the blood with blood that was not yet applied, the probability that last cup is from the blemished animal is a very low probability. Even in that case, they say, Yishafech la'ama, you have a last cup, it has to be spilled to the canal. There was a canal by the base of Mikdash there, by the altar, by the bottom there, where they would spill it. Okay. Our Mishnah explains the halacha of the admixture of blood that was applied above the red line. Okay. Which is very important to explain. To understand this next part of the Mishnah, a 9 Tetamud Bet. We've learned that there are 3, you can say, categories of offerings regarding the blood application. That the blood application upon the outer altar, okay, we're talking about those offerings upon the outer altar. The blood application on the outer altar is in different manners, different ways. Okay, you have the sin offering of an animal, where the blood is applied above the Chut HaSikra, the red line, in the application of the 4 applications on the 4 corners. And then you have the Olat Behima, the burnt offering, an animal burnt offering, Asham, the guilt offering, the Shlomim, the peace offering, the Todah, the thanksgiving offering, the El Nazir, which is the Nazir's ram, where they're given, the blood application is done below the red line. And an application which is 2, Shtei Matanot Shen Arba, which are 4. Okay. That's, again, we talked about the Chatat Beima, the sin offering animal, the Olat Beima, the burnt offering animal. Then we have number 3 is the Bechor, the Bechor animal, firstborn animal, Maaser. Maaser is a 10th animal, every 10th animal. Pesach, Paschal offering, which the blood there is done below the Chut HaSikra, which is a red line that goes around the altar. With one application, which is corresponding to the Yesod, to the base, in other words, where the base is. Our Mishnah deals with a case where the bloods of these were mixed one with another. That's what we're talking about. I'm sorry for the long preface, but I thought it would be important to give it. Hanitonin lemata, blood that was applied below the red line, such as the burnt offering, the animal burnt offering, and the asham, shenit alvu benitanin lemalo, that they became mixed with the bloods that have to be applied above the red line, which is the chatat be'ema, which has to be applied above the red line. So it got mixed up, the bloods. Eliezer omer iten lemala, he should first, he has this mixture of blood, do the application with his finger. Why? When it comes to the chatat, the sin offering, animal sin offering, he receives the blood of the chatat, of the sin offering, in a vessel, in a kli sharet, and from the vessel he does a sprinkling with his finger. Okay, and how we know this is a pasuk, a verse that states this in Vayikra Dalet Lamed Dalet, chapter 4, verse 34. Okay, let's carry on. So Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Yiten lemala, he should apply from the blood, right, above the red line, chut hasikra, having intention for the application of a sin offering. And I relate the blood that is for below, as if they are water, and it hasn't done any prohibition, hasn't transgressed. And he's not yet. And then he goes back and he does with the rest of the blood, because again it's a mixture of blood with the chatat also in there, and also ola, and the rest of the blood, he goes back and he ten lemata, he should, below the red line, he should do the blood application. Okay, and this will fulfill his, the blood application that has to be done below, and also and also and then he also has to, he also has included in there for below, will also do the spilling of the remnant blood to the yisod. Okay, the blood must be spilled by the ama, because they say we do not see the blood lower blooded if it is water, and therefore, since it's forbidden to change the place of the blood application, therefore he cannot do the blood application above, rather has to be all spilled down to the canal. Okay. Lama. I just want to go over this with Art Scroll as well, so that we all understand this. Hanitanin lemata, regarding bloods that be applied below the red line of the altar. So, just so that we understand this, Hanitanin lemata, 79b2, regarding bloods that should be applied below the red line of the altar, Shnitarvu b'nitanin lemala, the second paragraph in 79b2, that mixed with blood that should be applied above it. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Yiten lemala, the Kohen should apply the bloods above. And I view the bloods that should be applied below the red line that are above, as if they were water. Okay, and therefore he's not transgressing an issur, as I've stated in the Hebrew. And then he goes back and does the application below. Now, footnote 26, just so we all have clarity. Footnote 26, 79b2 in Art Scroll, the Kohen should apply parts of the mixed blood above in accordance with the procedure for a chatat, a sin offering. Although by doing so, he will also be improperly applying the bloods of the other offerings to the upper part of the altar, because it's only good for a sin offering. Rabbi Eliezer contends that the restriction on applying lower blood above applies only when this is done with the intention that it be counted as an avoda, but as long as he doesn't intend the application of that part of the blood to serve as tzirika, we can view the blood as if it were water, a non-sacrificial substance, and no restriction is involved, no transgression will be involved. Okay, and I think this gives clarity. And we said the Chachamim say Yishafeich la'amad, let them be poured into the canal. But if he did not encounter and applied the blood above, it is valid. Now we're on 80A1 in Art Scroll. Yes, I have been using Hebrew Gemara, but I am constantly verifying my explanations and elaborations so that everything will be emet, lamito, and correct. Fine. Part B of the Mishnah, which begins on Daf Pei Amud Aleph, 80A1. Anitanin b'matana achat. Blood that has only one application of blood, shenitarvu benitanin b'matana achat, that got mixed with others that also have only one application of blood. For example, the blood of the Bechol, firstborn offering, and they got mixed with the blood of the Maaser, the 10th animal, or the blood of another Bechol. Whether the blood got mixed up or the cups. There's cups, we don't know which one is which blood. Inatnu b'matana achat, they shall be applied with one matana, one application of blood. In other words, from every cup, one must only do one application of blood. Matan arba. Now, blood that requires an application of four blood applications, that got mixed with b'matan arba, with cases, bloods that also need to be applied with 4 applications of blood, which is what? For example, the blood of the olah, the burnt offering, with the blood of the shlamim, the peace offering. So every one of the cups there, you don't know which one is it, whether it is an olah, a blood of an olah, or a blood of a shlamim, whether it's the blood of a burnt offering or the blood of a peace offering. You just take every cup and you do an application of 4. Matan arba, an additional halacha. Matan arba, blood that requires 4 applications of blood. For example, the burnt offering that got mixed with the matana achat, with, for example, the bechor blood, with something that only requires 1 blood application. Again, blood that requires an application of four blood applications, matan arba. For example, the blood of an olah, of a burnt offering, that got mixed with blood that only requires 1 application of blood, with the blood of a bechor. Rabbi Eliezer omer inatnu b'matan arba, they must be applied with the 4 blood applications. And what do you do about the bechor? Safek bechor, it's a doubt whether the blood is a bechor blood, and that only requires 1. We view it as water, as we've stated before, and therefore no isur will be transgressed, because water that's applied is no transgression is transgressed, and he's not transgressing bal tovsif. Rabbi Yeshua omer inatnu b'matana achat, the application should be done with 1 application of blood in such a case. And that should also permit in the case of the olah. Because we know halachically, for sacrifice to be accepted and to atone, from what I recall, from my humble understanding, one matana post facto will be good. One application of blood. Because according to Rabbi Yeshua, we don't say that we see the blood as if it's water. And therefore he will be over transgress Bal Yosef, adding to the Torah. Omar le Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yeshua, I'm adding to Rabbi Yeshua because Rabbi Eliezer is saying to this to Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Eliezer, Omar says the Mishnah, Omar le Rabbi Eliezer said to Rabbi Yeshua, according to Yeshita Harei, with the application of one application of blood from the blood that requires a 4 application, over al bal tigra, do not, what's Korea? You're supposed to give 2, which are 4. And you are subtracting, taking away from. Yeah, that's the word in Arts Code. I didn't look at Arts Code before for the English word. It's subtracting. Over al bal tikra. Torah said to do 2, which are 4. Amar Rabbi Yeshua, Harei, said Rabbi Yeshua to him, Harei, with this application of 4 applications of blood, from the blood that is done with only 1, he's transgressing Bal Tosif, because by Bechor, you can't do, in this case, where there's one of the bloods that's mixed in there, is a blood of Bechor, which only needs 1 application. So he's transgressing Bal Tosif. The transgression of Bal Tosif, not adding, in other words, not doing more than 1 application, in this case, is when it's before itself. When the blood that was given with one application is before itself, and he's giving it in 4. In other words, you have the blood of the Bechor, and you're supposed to only do 1 application, and the person decides to do 4 applications of blood. That is a transgression of Bal Tosif, of adding to the Torah. But when he is dealing with the application of a blood of ta'arovet, of a mixture of blood, with 4 applications, he's not transgressing. Amar Rabbi Yeshua, Yeshua said to him, Lo ne'emar bal tigra ela k'shu be'atzmo. Bal tigra, do not subtract, is only when it's before itself. Okay, that you shouldn't subtract and do less applications because of the blood that is given in 1 application that is mixed in it. He's not transgressing Bal tigra. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yeshua, says Rabbi Yeshua, I'm going to go over this with the article in a minute, Bezrat Hashem. When Rabbi Yeshua says to Rabbi Eliezer, when you did the application of 4 for blood that must be done only with 1 application of Bal Tosif, you're adding asita maseh ve'asita maseh beyadecha, and you've done an action with your hands. The application of the blood. Kshelo natata, when you didn't do the application of the blood with 4, and you only did 1, avalt al bal tigra, lo asita maseh yadecha. You may have transgressed, do not subtract, but you didn't transgress maseh yadecha with your very hands to do it. This is very important to understand this last part of the Mishnah, and then we'll go on to the Gemara Bezrat Hashem. Before I do that, I want to go over the Mishnah with Art Scroll, so we have clarity, we have Chazorah. It's good to go over this slowly. So, we are on page 80A1. That whole page. Anitanin lematana achat, if bloods require. In the cases that follow, all the bloods are supposed to be applied below the red line of the altar. Footnote 1. In the cases that follow, all the bloods are supposed to be applied below the red line of the altar. However, they differ in the amount of applications required. Some offerings require only 1 application of their blood on a side of the altar, whereas some require 2 applications on 2 opposite corners in a way that the blood spreads to all 4 sides, the Ola, Asham, Shlomim, and Toda. Fine. Hanitanin, now we begin the Mishnah on the top. Hanitanin b'metanachat. If blood's requiring 1 application to the altar, Shinital b'metanachat became mixed with other bloods requiring 1 application. In natnu b'metanachat, they should be applied in 1 application, and that will suffice, will be enough for both offerings. Matan arba, if blood's requiring 4-sided applications, b'matan arba became mixed with other bloods requiring 4-sided applications, inatnu b'matan arba should be applied in 4-sided applications, that suffices for both offerings. Matan arba, if blood's requiring 4-sided applications, b'matan achat became mixed with bloods requiring only 1 application, the following dispute emerges. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, inatnu b'matan arba, the mixed bloods should be applied in 4-sided applications. Rabbi Yeshua Omer, Yeshua says, inatnu b'matan achat, they should be applied in 1 application. Okay. Omar le Rabbi Eliezer said to Rabbi Yeshua, Arei over al bal tigra, but if a kohen were to perform only 1 application with this mixture, he would be thereby transgress the prohibition not to subtract from the Torah. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yeshua, Arei over al bal tosif. But if a kohen were to perform more than 1 application with a mixture, he would thereby transgress the prohibition not to add to the Torah. Now each Tana defends his own position. Amar Rabbi Eliezer said to Rabbi Yeshua, Lo ne'emar bal tosif ela kshehu be'atzmo. The prohibition not to add to the Torah doesn't apply except where the blood requiring 1 application, is by itself, not where it is mixed with blood requiring more applications. Omel Rabbi Yeshua, Lo ne'emar bal tigra ela kshehu be'atzmo. The prohibition not to subtract from the Torah doesn't apply except where the blood requiring 4-sided applications is by itself. However, here it is mixed with blood requiring only 1 application. Rabbi Yeshua said further, if you make more than 1 application, you transgress the prohibition not to add to the Torah. In addition, you have actively performed the deed. On the other hand, if you do not make more than 1 application, granted you transgress the prohibition not to subtract from the Torah, but you have not actively performed the deed. Footnote 12. If one must violate a precept one way or another, he should choose to do so passively rather than actively. Famous Indian. Rabbi Yeshua's first reason suffices to explain why we do not require the Kohen to make all the applications to avoid the prohibition not to subtract. The second reason explains why it is preferable to make only 1 application. Okay, now, I just want to emphasize, what I've done here, I used the Hebrew Gemara, and Bezrat Hashem gave you the explanations I have there. I've given you explanations from a Gemara with English of Art Scroll. Of course, the explanations in Hebrew include explanations of Rashi and so forth. And I'm hopeful that this will inspire you